Hello. Here we are again. Now then, today, yesterday actually, I took receipt of a new sequential switch, and if I'm going to have one of those, of course, also going to have a new sequential controller, making two of them, so we could use that two sequences on the synth at the same time. We're using two different sets of oscillators and what have you, and synchronize them together and all that kind of thing. Not sure if you could actually sequentially trigger one sequencer after another. That's a bit of a thought for me, but if it's possible, I'll do something about that at a later date. The reason I'm doing this video now is because I wanted to talk about how we go on with actually adding new modules. They probably are out there, but I'm always watching the programs, the videos, all about how we do the cut. So I'm always watching the programs about the gear from the outside, never about the inside. And I'm sure there must be videos out there that talk about putting new synth modules in and so on, but I've actually yet to see one, and that's not to say they aren't there, it's just that I haven't. And I've not sought them out either. So obviously I've done a bit of reading about how I need to put this in, etc. But the purpose of the video here is actually to look at the process of including those. Now I could, of course, simply unscrew enough paneling on the bottom of here and install the new sequencer there, but that just seems to be a missed opportunity. I'm not sure that I'm totally on board with the layout of the sequencer and the oscillators and everything as it stands. So I'm thinking, could this be a good time to look at changing everything over? Now, I seem to find myself doing an awful lot of patching, doing a lot of very long patch cables between things, especially from right over here on the sequential switch for the sequencer. From the interface a little bit, I've used that a little bit, the various multiples here, and of course there's another set of attenuators at here. So things like that, for the most part, in small groups like the oscillators, I suppose it makes sense that we've got 3 oscillators and then a driver, and then another 3 standard oscillators, and then the 91 oscillator is a bit on its own, isn't it? And of course all that very nicely fits into one area. But as for everything else, I'm not so sure. I've got the filters are sort of generally up here, and the amps and envelopes and the delay functions are generally over there. I don't know that I like having the EGs all the way at over there. I just think that somehow this could be slightly better arranged. And this video is going to be a time lapse of me actually doing that. So I've already taken all the patch cables off. As you can see, I had a little sequence going before for the last thing, and now I want to look at taking up some modules and thinking about the overall width of what will go together. I'm going to come up with a plan to connect everything back up. I may not move everything. In fact, I may not even move very much at all, but I'm going to give it some thought and then decide what I'm going to do. So, see you in the fast bit. Okay, where are we getting to? So you can see here what I've done is let's just move that down. Sorry about the sudden movement there. But we can see inside the Eurorack. We don't often see in here, do we? So here's a look. The Behringer Eurorack has it has a switch mode power supply DC coming into it, and then that DC is once again being regulated, filtered, etc. There's still quite a lot of power supply components in this to say that there is already quite a chunky power supply that plugs into it. So obviously, if you are dealing with an audio device, you really want your power supply to be absolutely smooth as possible. And some people go to extreme lengths. One of my early jobs was to work in a high-end hi-fi shop, and people manufacturers went to great lengths, so almost sort of mythical lengths to make sure that power supplies were as noise-free as possible, running systems that ran on batteries, for example. So yeah, so the power supply is section A over there. Well, it's actually called section C. This is section A, section B, section C, and well, the actual voltage rating of this, or current rating, I should say, so it should be easily enough to support that a couple of all the stuff we're going to put on it. After all, with this whole setup is supporting all of these on the top row, so having the bottom row to do something similar is going to be pretty much the same deal. Now, I've also got to remember that I have one more module to come, but I was so excited about putting this one in, I couldn't wait. I do have a Victor oscillator module coming on eBay, but that's going to take a little while to get here. Got a few more things I'd like to put into this. I'd love some of the Brains oscillators, but they seem to be hard to get for a reasonable price at the moment. And some other kind of effects, etc. I'd like to have some ring modulation and things like that in here, but who knows when that's going to happen. So I've cleared out the whole of the bottom rack, and I'm just going through the motions of deciding what I should put where. Now, one thing that occurs to me, and please tell me if you think I'm perhaps overthinking this, is that on this side we have the power supply. This power supply has a couple of power transistors here with a dirty grey heatsink for the size of the whole thing, and I'm thinking that that's going to generate a fair bit of heat. So I don't really want thermally sensitive components to be sitting over the top of that. Anything that has where the a bit of component drift through temperature is going to affect the sound. Don't really want it there. So now I'm thinking that obviously the sequencer is one such device. So I'm thinking that the sequencers I have here should probably be over the more passive end of the power distribution here, and I'll put the more passive components, perhaps the things that aren't quite so susceptible, towards this end. Now, I suppose you could argue, well, why don't you just put the sequencers right at the bottom? The other thing is I don't want them to be too far removed from the oscillators and things. I'm trying to also think about how best to make best use of the patch cables I have, and without getting patch cables that are so long they can go from anywhere to anywhere, and then you can't see what you're doing on the panel. It'd be nice to make use of the shorter ones that I have too. So I'm now thinking about where we go with this. I want the oscillators to be somewhere where I'm not going to knock the knobs at all. I guess they could go here, but I think they're actually quite happy there. Not really planning to change any of that. I think what I'm going to do, and quite simply, is to move the sequencers down here. I'm going to put some of the other oscillator controllers and devices up on this level, and I want to put the mixers down here. In fact, the trouble with putting mixers over there is they're too far removed from where I want. I want one of them to plug into my MS-20 here, so I guess I could have a mixer down here and then a few other bits. Okay, I've also got to remember actually that I'm not filling up the entire bottom rack here, and I don't have the plates necessarily to make up for any gaps that I'm going to create either. So yeah, it's a work in progress. So I'm going to carry on with that now and see if I can't get all these bits into a better position from my slightly twisted point of view. Okay, see you in a bit. Hey, so this is the setup. I've not screwed everything down yet or connected all the power cables in, but we'll get around to that in the next video. I'll do all that and then we'll start playing with it. So there we go. This is what I'm going to decide to do for now, and I've cheated slightly. Look, everything has gone back in. All the holes are filled in, but that's because I've got an attenuator here which I'm not fitting, and I've decided to leave that out for the moment because I don't need that many attenuators yet. I'm still working on this project, and I do have the other Victor oscillator to come. I think when I get the Victor oscillator, I suspect that and the attenuator will probably take up this small panel here, or that the equivalent space, so it'll all move around after that. So once I've got that sorted, that'll be great. For now, I'm going to leave it like this. Gives me a couple of spaces to put notes on or whatever. Blank for your message maybe, and that's where it'll be. So let's do it all up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Have a good one.